All right, we're live. The first edition of the SCMP MMA Live Chat of 2021. You know, the world was crazy in 2020 and it doesn't stop. 2021 is the same thing. It's just another number.
Uh,
And today, man, I got a good guest, man, for everybody. It's different from what we normally bring in as a guest because normally we bring in like a coach or like another like media member or somebody like that. But I feel like this guy is going to educate you on some things that's going to blow your mind because as a spectator of the sport, you only see the exterior. You know, you only see certain aspects of it. And Jordi, the fight dietitian. And once you hear that name, the fight dietitian, you're never going to forget it, right? And Jordi Sullivan, man, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Man, how you living, man? How is the COVID era affecting your life?
Man, good to see you, John. I was saying, as we were saying offline, we haven't spoken since February last year, right before COVID happened. And what a whirlwind. Hey, it's funny, everyone, 2020 and then can't wait for 2021. It's the exact same in 2021. But man, COVID wasn't too bad for us, to be honest. We run our business and the company primarily online. So I guess we were a little bit ahead the curve there. So it wasn't too much. It was a bit of adjusting, obviously. Like I like to go to New Zealand quite frequently and see the boys out there and get that face-to-face time. But same boat as everyone. Hey, you're just doing what you can and just keep trucking on.
Yeah, that you know, you mentioned New Zealand because you live in Australia, so you know throughout the years you've been going back and forth from New Zealand, but right now New Zealand is kind of shut out because you once you enter, you have to go through that 2 week quarantine. And I was talking with Dan Hooker yesterday, and he was telling me that if you want to enter the country, there's like a backlog because you have to, I guess, schedule your hotels in advance to do your
Yeah,
quarantine. So
it's
it's
crazy.
probably been difficult for you, especially, right, to get over there.
Yeah. So I haven't been able to get over since all of this happened because they have the quarantine. I guess New Zealand's they've kind of led the world in how they've handled COVID. And I guess parts of Australia have done really well as well. Just yesterday they opened up that people from Auckland can fly to Brisbane where I'm from and they don't have to quarantine. But if you're going over to New Zealand, you still have to do the quarantine. And yeah, poor old Hangman. I think Brad, Israel, and Carlos, when they went over for Carlos's fight on the Dana White Contender Series, is when they changed all these rules into the new quarantine rules. So what the boys have to do now is they go over and you have to apply and get a ticket to go into one of the quarantine hotels. But because people are freaking out about it, they book it out months and months in advance. And the boys didn't know that. So they were over in Las Vegas with Carlos helping him get ready. And they went to go back and they go, oh, crap. Like I've got to book in. And then so they have to hang out for 6 weeks. And same with Dan. I think he's in Abu Dhabi for a month or something. They couldn't get him back till end of February to get him a ticket in one of these hotels. So crazy times, crazy times.
Yeah, so we don't want to get too deep into the COVID because I'm pretty sure throughout the last 10 months or a year, everybody's been just that's what they've been talking about all the time. We want to get into some other things, but before we shift gears, I want you guys to go and check out Jordy's YouTube page. If you type in Jordan Sullivan, he should be there, right? The Fight Dietitian, type that in, search that, and then go subscribe to his page. And he got a lot of good videos on like he basically analyzes other fighters weight cuts and their systems of how they do it, and he kind of gives you a different perspective of like an outside point of view of a professional watching them do it. It's very interesting, man, and it tells you a lot of like stuff that you don't even know about, you don't even notice, right? And I'm gonna ask you a couple things from that, as we go. But yeah, go check it out. Also, make sure to subscribe to this page, like this, share this, comment, bring your questions, any questions. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to do with like weight cut and all that stuff. It could be anything you want. Anything. It's like, what underwear are you wearing? You know what I mean? Like boxers or briefs. I don't care. Anything. Just ask us. So yeah. So let's move on. The first thing I wanted to get into, because the last video you uploaded was your analysis of Khabib's last weight cut, right? And
Yeah.
I have a few questions about that. The first thing is your views on the sauna suit. Like, some people wear it, some people don't. Tell us, like, in short, like what is your view on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, it's funny because I've flip-flopped on this over the years because I think, especially when I started, I grew up doing amateur boxing as well. So maybe I have a bit of PTSD from that or something. And, when old coaches, if you're in a boxing gym, everyone's wearing the sauna suit and you're just doing it. And I guess now that the science has caught up, we've kind of established that there's not a lot of benefit in the way of burning more calories. Like you'll definitely sweat more and whatnot, but you don't actually burn more calories, and you're probably decreasing the quality of that training session. But then, and I was always on that mindset. And then I guess as I got into more of the weight-based sports and the science behind that, it's kind of come out this whole concept of what we call heat acclimation. And essentially for when you're cutting weight in a hot environment, whether it be a sauna or a hot bath, or if you're doing what Khabib was doing, like running, being in that sauna suit and getting your body better at sweating is actually very advantageous. You know, you can recruit more sweat glands, you can get more fluid out from each sweat gland. So now that the science has come around, it's like, oh, maybe all these old school boxers and all these people I bagged out for years were actually onto something. So, but I guess it's all contextual, right? And the first thing I always think when we're doing a weight cut and we're doing that last little water cut, as we call it, you want to make it as safe and as minimally risky for that athlete. And adding a sauna suit almost adds just a layer of heat, a layer of stress that probably doesn't help the process all that much. And that's why I'm not the biggest fan. I'm definitely not using a sauna suit in an actual sauna. Maybe working out in a sauna, like, yeah, maybe in a sauna suit working out, but it's all contextual. Like if he does that routinely through his fight camp, then yeah, fine. But like, it's very hard to say. As a rule of thumb, I'm not the biggest fan of say, hey, you want to cut weight, jump in a sauna suit and go run for as far as you can. I think there's many different ways you can do it. That's a lot better for the athlete.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think a lot of people don't know. They just see the old school boxers, and also a lot of the Thai guys. That's what you see when you go to Thailand, is the Thai guys in sauna suits in heat running down the street, and they do it like multiple times a week. It's crazy, right? Just watching that and just their mental fortitude of being able to go through that. I can't do that, man. So for a regular person, right? Let's say you're a regular person and you're not cutting weight, but you know, a lot of people connect losing weight with sweating, right? They do. And that's, I think, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they connect it to. So as someone that's trying to lose weight and exercise, would you recommend them to put on like some layers so they can sweat more? Or would you rather just have them just wearing a regular clothes, just a t-shirt and shorts, and get out there and exercise?
Yeah, short answer is no, don't do it. And then medium answer is to lose weight. If your goal is to lose weight, you need to be burning more calories than what you're consuming. And I always say to people, well, if you're wearing a sauna suit and you go for a run, just like you said, if you're running in Thailand or even where I am in Brisbane, it's really hot. Lots of parts of Asia, it's really hot. If you want to go and run 10 kilometers and you're going to be running for 40 to 60 minutes or whatever pace you set, if you put a sauna suit on, you're probably going to run a lot slower. You're not going to be able to hit higher intensities. Whereas if you just wear, comfortable shorts and, a singlet or a tank top and you run, you're probably going to hit a faster pace and you're going to end up burning more calories. So unless that sauna suit is giving you a better quality session, which I highly, highly doubt it is, you're probably better off not having it on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, that's what they feel, like regular people. They just feel like, oh, I sweated this much. Look at my shirt, it's soaked. So I must have lost a lot of weight, but you just lost a lot of water at the end of the day, right? So yeah, it's just something I wanted to know, because man, I'm gonna be clear with, like, I think I gained like around 10 kilos this year. That's crazy, right? Like I've never been this big, and actually I've been this big, and I think this is the biggest I've ever been in my life. So I got to get that back down. 2021's got to be the year to let bring that back down, but slowly, what I mean, not like just go too crazy, because I'm not a young buck. When you're young, it's easier.
Oh yeah,
right?
It's easy.
It's easier. Yeah. So now another thing is what I noticed on Fight Island, right? And we're gonna get into Fight Island a little bit more now, is cutting weight at night and sleeping versus waking up early and cutting weight. Like this is something that interests me. It's like, what would you recommend, on Fight Island? Because I think a lot of people are worried about fighting at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., those types of things. So what's best for that situation?
Yeah, I guess Fight Island is an interesting place because at least when we were there, I think Khabib had different times, but we were fighting anywhere from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. And so we were trying to get the guys' bodies acclimated for that time with their sleep and everything else. And just the way that weigh-ins worked is that weigh-ins were at 5 p.m. So it was like weigh-ins on that Friday at 5 p.m. But then that was when they were meant to be in bed. So it was always this kind of weird dance of like, okay, when do we go to bed? When do we wake up? What's going to be best? But as a general rule of thumb, it all comes down to how much weight you have to cut, how much water you have to cut in that last 24 hours. Say if you've got, we use the scale of 0 to 5% is pretty safe, and you can pretty comfortably do that in a couple of hours in a couple of given sessions, say in a morning. But if you've got more than that to do, it's probably good to break it up and, do some the night before and then wake up and do it. And I think after watching that Khabib video, that was what he must normally do. He breaks up, say if he had, I don't know, let's say 4 kilos to do, 5 kilos to do, let's say 5, he'd do 2.5 kilos at night, hopefully sleep and get to what's called a float. So when you float, maybe he floats 500 grams and then he wakes up and he's only got, like 1.5 kilos to do, and then he can do it on the bike or whatever. But when you wake up in the morning, yes, you probably get a better sleep, but you're playing the game of, okay, should I have cut that weight the night before? And now I'm left with all this weight and I don't have enough time. And a lot of the time you play this game against the clock. And that's the biggest thing. And I guess like when I was over in Fight Island, we had 4 guys that were fighting, and constantly in my head, you're running through the numbers. Okay, these guys need this much time to get this much weight off, and then I need him to go rest, because you don't want to just be sitting in a sauna for 4 hours straight and sweating. You want to give these guys time and a break and allow their body to reacclimate to the temperature of the room and everything else. So you're like playing this game. Okay, this guy needs 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I'm going to run to this room and do that. So I think it really just comes down to how much weight does this guy need to lose, and how much time are we working with? Do we have to get up at 3 a.m. to cut the weight? I think Khabib gave himself 3 hours to do it. And I would say, I think the way that he did it with the exercise, I don't know what he normally does, what his past is, but I would say that probably wasn't the best way to do it. Maybe he could have done the exercise the night before and then just simply sat in a nice lukewarm bath and got the last, 1.5 kilos off. It's all contextual though. It's all very much, what do you normally do and how much do you have to do and how much time do we have to get it off?
And one thing about Khabib too is that when he weighed in his last fight, everybody's like, oh, he looks so drained, man. He's, like that's something that interests me, from someone from your perspective. When you see the weigh-ins, like what are some of the telltale signs that the fighter had a bad weight cut? Because we don't know, because they're not filming everything and showing everything live. So we just see them on the scale. And that's why they do the scales. That's why they do the live weigh-ins, to show like what kind of condition these fighters are in. But sometimes you see fighters that look drained, and the next day they come out and knock out the dude in like 30 seconds. They look phenomenal, right? So what are the telltale signs that someone had a bad weight cut?
Yeah, we have a bit of a rule within our team, is that if you send someone out and they look like a real skeleton, like they've just come up out of the grave, zombie style, that they may as well have just missed weight, because I don't think that's a good look. And I don't think it's completely necessary. If you plan all of their nutrition, if you plan, their nutrition throughout this fight camp and that fight week, and you end up on certain numbers, you should be able to program for them to not be like that. And you should be able to program strategies where they don't have to cut huge amounts of water. And even if they do, you can do training during the camp and outside of camp to get their body, like I said, more efficient at sweating, get their body more used to the bath and everything else. So when I see guys rocking up to the scales and they're barely moving and they've got no energy, that suggests you've had a very restrictive fight week, which you've probably pulled back on a lot of things far too early. So you're probably, not a lot of energy going on there. And then when they look really drained, and especially around here, around your orbitals and around your cheekbones, that's because you're pulling certain amounts of water from, I'll say deep in the body. It's not technically correct, but deep within the body. You're not just pulling the water that sits at the edge of our skin and, just in our blood around there. You're going inside the cells. Your body's going, okay, like we're in this hot environment. I need some water. I'm going to pluck it all from inside the cells. And that's where it gets really dangerous. So it's like if guys are coming up and they're really low energy and they can barely, get their pants off, if they're always cutting it so close and they're taking their underwear off, like that's probably not the best sign either, because you've probably pushed it right to that limit. And then if they look super, super drained, and don't get me wrong, like you're sitting in a sauna for a couple of hours or in a bath, you're going to be drained, but you should be able to program it so that final water cut isn't to the point that it's so drastic that this person is just barely making it on the stage. Like I understand, especially in in the COVID era that we're in now, short notice fights happen. And then that's a whole other conversation of like, should you let these guys take these fights? Who has the responsibility of choosing a weight class that's responsible for them? But yeah, that would be my two big things if they are barely crawling up on the stage and how zombie they look in their face.
Yeah, gamblers, that's what they look at. Gamblers, they look at the weigh-ins, man, because that's when they want to put in the bets a lot of the times, right? It's either the odds are good for them or they look for the weigh-ins, and after the weigh-ins, that's when they jump in and say, okay, I'm going to take this guy at this odds. So yeah, I don't gamble, but that's just something that I'm not a big weigh-ins guy, but you see it all the time, like people focusing on that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to read too much into it because you see guys have looked terrible, but then they go and perform really well. But you might be looking at the long-term effects of that, right? Not the short-term effects.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, right? And I think I'm a bit of a sciencey dude, and I'm a bit of a nerd, and I kind of like show me the studies. And at the moment, there's not a lot of studies kind of looking at this weight cut area, but from the studies we do have, in a health sense, we know it can be pretty bad when you're doing these big drastic weight cuts and guys are going full zombie and barely making it up on the stage. We know you're going to probably give yourself kidney damage. There's going to be liver damage. You're at more prone risk to brain damage during there. What we aren't completely sure of is the performance side, because we've all seen it. Like Khabib is a perfect example. Barely got up on stage and then he went out and mauled Justin the next night. So I think where we're sitting now is like you can probably do it and go out if you reload and rehydrate and have a pretty good performance. But I guess the seat that I'm sitting in is I'm kind of the health professional. So you're not just looking at this one fight, you're looking at the next one and the next one and the next one. And okay, like what's the straw that breaks the camel's back? And that's what you've always got to be mindful of. And I think it sends a scary message, right? Because you see these guys, like I think Conor McGregor's one when he went down to featherweight for Jose, he just looked like an absolute corpse. And it's a terrible thing. And then he goes out and knocks out Jose in the fastest and probably the most amazing style ever in MMA. And then people look at that and go, oh man, so I should probably cut that much weight and look like that and I'll get a performance like that. It's like, no. That's not the attitude you want to have towards this. You want to be thinking about it, yes, performance-wise, but also your health. And there's other things you can do during camp to get a good performance without having to do all this drastic weight cutting.
Now, before we get into your work with City Kickboxing, with Israel, with Dan, Volk, Kai, Brad, these are the names, man. Like you've built this roster of guys that you've been working with, throughout the last, it hasn't even been very long, right? It's been like 2 years or so, right? That you've been working with these guys?
Yeah, this is the third year this year. Yeah.
Okay, third year, right? So before we get into all that, let's get into some comments and some questions. Do we got some? Nick?
Yeah, we've got one here from, I'll put myself on screen briefly.
Right.
Tom asking, do you guys think the UFC should return with fans in Fight Island, but only allow those who are native of Abu Dhabi to attend? In my opinion, that eliminates the issue of having fans flying from all around the world. And Dana always talks about Abu Dhabi having control of the virus, so they could allow natives to attend events.
We'll start with you, Jordi, because you've been there. So you've been to the arenas, right? So what's going on over there?
Man, I think it would be a really cool thing to have the fans back in there, because even the whole fight week experience, the fans are such a huge part of it. Even for me, I'm just the little nutrition dude that sits in the corner, But even for me, seeing all the fans during fight week and when you're in the arena and everyone going, like Eugene always says to these guys, like when you walk out, you've got to suck that energy and you've got to bring that energy and take it in with you. And a lot of the guys have said, it's a bit strange when you're walking out there and there's no crowd, and it's a whole nother mental thing that these guys have to prepare for. I think for the sport, it would be amazing, but even for the whole experience for the fighters, we've got guys who are making their debut this year and they're going to make their debut with no fans. And it's a very bizarre thing. And it almost takes away from that, like going out and they're used to their local shows and walking out and this is such and such and everyone's going crazy. But then all of a sudden you're on the biggest stage, you've got to put in your best performance. And that's a factor that you've never experienced before. So I think if they could find a way to get fans there, I think it would be awesome. I think the Fight Island experience in itself is incredible, what the UFC and how they've done it. If anyone was going to figure out a way to get fans in there, whether it's from around the world or for Abu Dhabi, it's going to be Uncle Dana and his team.
Yeah, I know that, UAE Warriors, right? A promotion out there in the Middle East, not in Abu Dhabi. They are having fans, and what they're doing is you have to be vaccinated to be in attendance. That means you have to come with proof that you've been vaccinated, and you could come in and watch the show. Most likely, that's what the UFC is going to also do, right? Is to make sure this is clean, make sure everybody's okay. They're going to do the same protocol because I think the government runs pretty much everything that's going on. So I think if they want to, the UFC wants to do that, they're going to have they're going to follow the same protocol. And I think Dana White was saying like yesterday during the Q&A that they're going to have International Fight Week and it's going to happen on Fight Island. And it makes sense to me because if they go through that protocol of people being vaccinated in Abu Dhabi to come in and interact with the fighters and the coaches and whoever else and just enjoy that fight week for, internationally, then I think that that's the protocol that they need to follow. And I think they're going to be able to do it. If anybody's going to be able to do it, it's going to be them on that island. So, yeah. What's next? What do we got next for us?
Here we go. Eddie the Blasian, in taking that a bit further, says, if there are fans, do you think they will help Dustin Poirier or Conor McGregor more?
Jordi, what do you think?
I think Conor feeds off that, right? Like Conor just absolutely feeds off that. And Conor's just like, he's a phenomenal athlete, don't get me wrong. But he's destructive at how he gets in people's heads, I'm excited for it. I don't really know. I would say it would probably work with Conor more because I think I've seen how he works a crowd, and just it's crazy. Like goes around, people just erupt and go wild, and there's Conor fans running all around. It must be very confronting if you're the dude that's fighting this guy, and he's not even he's an Irish guy. Like I've seen in the States, and like just everyone gets behind him. He just has this way and this influence on people where he just brings it out, and I feel like that would be very intimidating for someone to have to go up against. But Dustin's no joke, so I'm looking forward to that fight. Like I thought I was very admirable of Dustin. And then I saw that fight with him and Dan. And I just thought, wow, like this guy is a world beater. I don't know who's going to beat him. So I think if there were fans, I think Conor would find a way to help him out. But who knows picking that one.
Yeah, that's what's going to be interesting with Conor because Dustin's performed in that environment and he's performed well. So he doesn't need the fans. He doesn't need that. Psychologically, he's ready to get the revenge, right? And then Conor, man, was the Cowboy fight? Was that fight in front of fans? That was, right?
It was, yeah. It would have been just before COVID, yeah.
That's right. So that means Conor has never experienced that himself, right? And like you said, he has this mentality. He has this confidence in himself, and he also has this ego, and the energy that he gets from the fans feeds the ego and feeds the confidence when he enters the cage, right? And I'm also very intrigued by seeing how that would happen. That's why I'm kind of pushing towards Dustin, just because Dustin's been more active, and and he's just 10 times better than he was when they fought earlier, like a couple years ago. And yeah, man, and they're fighting at a totally different weight class. And yeah, man, it's just hard. But I'm leaning towards Dustin in this fight just because of those reasons. Also, another factor is Michael Chandler. He's gonna be the co-main event against Dan Hooker, and Michael Chandler has never fought in that environment either, right? Was the Benson Henderson fight in front of no fans? Maybe it was. I'm not for sure, but still, you're going into a brand new promotion, the biggest stage in the world, and you're making your debut, and there's all these expectations that are set forth, right? Like they wanted you to be the backup for the title fight. That's high expectations, man. And you're stepping in there with Dan Hooker, who is a guy that doesn't care about your expectations at all. Like this guy mentally he's insane, right? You know him. Talk about Dan a little bit. Jordi, you've been around him a lot.
Dan is one of the nicest but scariest human beings I've ever met in my life. Like he's the nicest guy. He'll always, go out of his way for you, but he's one person, like, and I kind of joke around and like train with these guys. He's just one person I would never want to like even half get on his bad side, because he's just a straight up killer. And he just has that mindset where he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Like he goes in there, he doesn't care if he dies. He's going to put his body on the line no matter. And we've seen it with these fights. It's just that mentality. It's all of those Kiwi fighters. It's that warrior spirit. And I think you see it. It's like, I work with so many athletes, but there's those city kickboxing guys, and Dan probably rises above on all of this. They just have this something in them, and I can only describe it's like that warrior spirit, and I just wouldn't want to be on the other end of that. Like I just wouldn't want to be doing it. But Dan, like, yeah, I'm so excited for that fight. I think another thing is like going through the fight week in Fight Island is very different to like all of the other fight weeks that you would do in the other big UFC events. But Chandler was there, wasn't he, when he was meant to be backup for Khabib and Justin? So he's kind of seen it. Like he sees how it operates, because you got to go in and then you do your 2-day quarantine. You're sitting in a room by yourself, and then you've got to like train in these bizarre rooms, and it's a weird setup, and it takes a couple of days to get your head around. But I feel like Chandler's kind of been there, hasn't he? And he's familiar with everyone who's there and the process of it all, which might be beneficial to him. It's not like he's going in completely green on, what's Fight Island all about. Yeah,
Chandler's a consummate professional, man. Like if you followed him throughout the years, this guy, there's a reason why the UFC likes him. There's a reason why they want to push him into those spots to where he can become the champion, because he would be a good representative for the UFC. It's clear, you know what I mean? Everybody knows that. And all he has to do is win the fights. And what Dan has to do is stop him from doing that and put himself in that position and try to put another belt. That would be crazy, right? Because city kickboxing, if Dan could actually get up there and get that lightweight title, that's crazy right there, right? Just that small of a team carrying 3 belts. If you look at it, you know what I mean? Like who would have thought of that 5 years ago? Nobody would have thought of that ever, especially on that small island of New Zealand. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's wild. I guess if you talk to Eugene, I guess he saw it, I suppose, and you talk about city kickboxing and how it's developed and how it's really reached a lot of stardom in the last couple of years. But if you talk to those guys they're such a tight-knit team, and there's so much history within them. And they've got, Eugene is probably one of the most phenomenal minds in the sport at the moment, but they've got other coaches. They've got Andre Paulet, who's probably one of the best counter wrestlers. They get the Hickman boys. They get Frankie out there, who's one of the best wrestlers in the world, best wrestling coaches, Mike Angove. They've got Doug Viney. They've just got a powerhouse of geniuses about combat sports all in there. And it's just the way they talk about, they go out and they've got Twister, who's a former world champion kickboxer, and they have game plans for all of their athletes, and Eugene has a path set for all of them. So I guess, yeah, you're seeing a lot of this come up, but once you talk to him, I think Eugene's kind of seen this plan in his head for a long time.
Yeah. So what we got next, Nick?
All right, we got a couple questions for Jordi about weight cutting. Randy Schmidt asking, have you had to stop a weight cut to protect a fighter's health? What do you look for? I think you may have said about the skeleton, but yeah, have you ever had a situation where you've had to take someone out of a fight?
Yeah, professionally, I've only had one person where I've done this with, and I've worked with, it was a female actually. I've worked with her for years and years, so we knew each other really well, very close with her. I think when you make that decision to pull a cut, you can only do it if you have a certain type of relationship with that athlete, because athletes are their own worst enemies. They're too tough for their own good. They'll just keep going, and you need to have that buy-in with them that they believe that you're looking out for their best interests. So yeah, it happened to me once. We do a lot of measuring. When we're in the bath, we're measuring blood pressure. We got a pulse oximeter. We're measuring heart rate. We're always looking for cognition. We're always doing like little assessments on them and to see how cognitive they are, how they're responding to certain stimuli, checking how their blood pressure and their heart rate are changing through this. What's happening this time that is against all the other times we've cut weight? Are they within normal ranges? But this time, yeah, something just wasn't happening. And it was around, she had a menstrual cycle actually, and we just didn't plan for it. A few other things, external things that were going on in her life which added a lot more extra stress. And it just got to the point where we have a cutoff with all our guys. If it gets to this point, then, no bueno, we're not doing it. And we got to that point, and she convinced me to let her go for, one more round in the sauna. And after that, I just rang the promoters and I just said, hey, you got to trust me. Like, this has happened. They were like, yeah, we trust you. It's fine, whatever. And you know what? The craziest thing is that like fighters, I think in their head, they're like, oh my God, I miss weight. No one cared. Like, that's the thing. Like one, you kind of explained it to everyone. I guess on the big stage, it's a real thing. But, the next night, this athlete in particular went out and put on a barn burner of a performance. and not one single person was talking about her missing weight. Like, yes, she shouldn't do it. It's not professional, but I don't think you should be pushing that envelope at that level until you're, very high level UFC. You shouldn't really be like pushing that envelope where you're going to compromise someone's health for a local fight. So yeah, there's a bunch of things that we do, but ideally you plan for it. That just doesn't happen, and you can see it weeks away. And we kind of knew from numbers that it would be close, but ideally, yeah, it doesn't look good. It's not the best thing, but at the end of the day, if they're healthy afterwards and they can live to fight another day, then I'm happy.
Yeah, there's so many little intricate parts, man. A lot of people, they just want to criticize, right? But it's, at the highest level, I feel somewhat it's justified if it's something that it continually happens, right? When they miss weight, and it almost seems like they're missing weight on purpose. Some guys and girls, maybe, I don't know. I'm not making any accusations, but this is a competition, right? And you're trying to get the edge, and it could happen. I don't know. I'm not pointing fingers, but it is what it is. What's next? What do we got?
Tristan asking, what percentage of your weight is a safe amount to cut that it doesn't affect anything about the athlete? Just ignore it if you've already addressed it. I joined the chat late.
I'll give you a quick rundown. So essentially the water cut, which is that last 24 hours where you're actually sweating in a sauna, bath, running in a sauna. So whatever you're doing, 0 to 5% of your body weight is what we deem as safe, and that you can recover and go back into that cage pretty well recovered, 0 to 5%. And then what we say during that fight week, you can probably, within that as a total, you could probably lose a further 5%. So 10% of your body weight in total. So if I had to fight at 70 kilos and I turned up at 77 kilos, I'd be pretty confident by playing around with carbs, fluid, salt, and then doing a sauna or a bath, I could get 10% off pretty safely. And then as terms of like a rate of weight loss throughout fight camp, anywhere between 0.5 to 1.5% of that athlete's body weight per week. So that's a pretty generic scale you can take.
Jordi, I probably told you this before, but I guess the people that are watching right now, they probably don't know this, but I cut weight one time just to do it for a jiu-jitsu competition. And I think I was at like either 80 kilos or 82 kilos, right? And then a week out, I cut all the way down to 74, either Whoa. 74 or 72. How not beneficial was that for me? Because when I went in there, I made the weight, but when I went to go compete, I didn't have no strength, and luckily I didn't get submitted. I just was able to defend myself really well. But man, how bad was that for me? Just tell me, just in the short.
I just did some quick maths, and that was very bad. You shouldn't have done that. Why'd you do that? That was like 7.5%. The thing is like when we talk about this all within MMA, right? They've got 30 to 36 hours to recover, and the whole conversation about weight cutting should always be about how much time is there before competition. And if you've got 30 to 36 hours, we can push all of those numbers that we said, because like on Fight Island, they got 2 nights of sleeping and you could probably recover. For jiu-jitsu, most competitions, you rock up, you jump on the scale, they walk you to the bullpen, and then you like kind of sip some water in your dehydrated state, and then they go, John, you're up. And you go, shit. Yeah. And you're just like, and you got to go. Like that's happened to me a few times. But it's like, for that, you don't want to be doing any of this. Like you think about jiu-jitsu, it's an explosive sport where you need, it's called glycolytic, which is pretty much means we use a lot of carbohydrates. So you don't want to be cutting carbs going into it. You're going to be sweating a lot if you're wearing a gi. So you don't want to be dehydrated. There's all these things that you don't want to be, but people do it anyway, cutting weight. So yeah, you don't want to be doing it. If you've got a short time frame like that, there's a couple little things you can do, like a low fiber, low residue diet. You can bring down your calories slightly, maybe lose like 2% of your body weight in water. I just did the math and you did 7.5%. So that was like big no from me for you, John. But like maybe you get away with it. Maybe you get away with it for the first match. You get a sneaky sub, but it's not about it. It's like, what if you have to do, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 matches and you're so dehydrated, it's not going to be a good time.
Yeah, I feel like if I did like win, it would have gave me a false sense of security for future competitions, right? So I'm glad I didn't win, but it was so embarrassing, man. Like, because I had just like months ahead of that, I had just joined a new gym, and it was like I was representing this new gym during the competition, and then they're watching me, and I can't do shit, I can't do anything, right? Because I have no strength, no power. I'm just sitting at the bottom defending myself, And yeah, I felt bad. I stopped going to that place because I was too embarrassed to go back. But it is what it is, right? You got to continue. Now, what we got next?
Okay, a couple more weight cut themed questions if you're happy to answer them. Yeah, here we go. Randy, again, do you prefer the way One Championship handles it with the hydration rules in their weight classes?
That's a good question. And I'm pretty public about this. So short answer, no, I don't. I'm not a big fan of how one hydration testing. I don't. There's many reasons for it. The short answer is we don't know enough about hydration, and we don't know enough about hydration in the context of rapid weight loss or weight cutting to be able to say that if you pee into a cup, where that water sits and what color that is distinguishes whether person A is more hydrated than person B. What I do like about it, what I am a fan of, is that you've got some hindrance, and that can mentally play on the mind of these fighters. Oh, I've got to pass this P test. So, you know what, stuff it. I'm just going to go up a weight class, or I'm just going to, be real diligent with my diet and bring it down. Whereas normally I just wouldn't. I'd stay heavy and cut heaps of water. I like that aspect of it. But the technicalities of it, of actually using a urine specific gravity test to determine that, scientifically, I don't think is very sound. I don't think it's very thought out very well. There's a lot of ways to cheat it. And I'll put my hand up. I've said this publicly many, many times. I've cheated it. I've taken athlete, and I almost do it, as bad as it sounds, in debate, to be like, hey, look, I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's a great initiative, but people are going to manipulate it. And I think when you're manipulating it, especially the way that you can cheat it, I can do it. I have a pretty good understanding of renal physiology and everything else that's going on in the body. What about random person A who trains in a random gym in Phuket who's trying to do it, and they're just drinking water, sitting in a sauna? Oh shit, my pee's not clear, so I'm going to drink a bunch more water, then go sit in the sauna and just repeat. There's a lot of health risks that come just from doing that. And that health risk and all these little activities that are really dangerous only exist because they have to pass this hydration test. So it's like there's pros and cons on it, but I'm more on the side of I don't think it's the best solution right now.
Yeah, there's for everything, there's always a way to cheat. For everything. It doesn't matter, right? You could cheat the judges, you could cheat the ref, there's always ways. It's a game. It's a sport. There's ways to cheat everything. And I feel like that they're trying to do something that's positive for the sport, but at the same time, there's always going to be guys. It's just like USADA, right? Just like USADA, there's always going to be guys finding the next best thing to cheat, to get around these protocols, right? To get around these little testings. And I know it's out there. Someone's doing it. You could probably see it, man. Some of these guys are big. They're probably cutting weight, and they found a way. So we'll see what happens. What do we got here, Nick?
Stephen Ray saying that one's whole weight cutting structure is very iffy, though. They don't provide enough details on behind the scenes issues. Same thing with their drug testing. Daniel Harris asking, how does the whole UFC weigh-in process work? How long do you get to weigh in? And also what happened with Ludovic Klein not making weight against Shane Young at Fight Island? I think Izzy was pretty angry about that one, wasn't he?
Yeah. None of us are really happy about that. I'll answer the first one. How does the whole UFC weigh-in process work? So the way that it works is that usually weigh-ins are at, say, 9 a.m. Depending where you are in the world, they'll be at like 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. and they have a 2-hour weigh-in window. So say it's on a Friday at 9 a.m. Athletes can come down anywhere between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. and they just have to, before they go on the scale that everyone sees on the TV, there's a test scale at the back. They need to come in and they need to stand on that test scale and they need to pass. And then you're not allowed to drink any water. And then they'll line you up and then you walk out into the media weigh-ins and bang, everyone stands there, 3, 2, 1, boom, everyone takes the photos and then they go and you start your rehydration process. If you miss weight during that period, in that 2-hour period, if you stand on that test scale and you miss weight, they give you, I think it's 2 hours. I think they give you 2 hours, 90 minutes or 2 hours. I've never been in that spot where we've had to use it, but 90 minutes or 2 hours to go back up to your room or wherever you're cutting weight, get that weight back off. And then you have one more chance to make weight or miss weight. And then you go step on that test scale and then they'll let you up. So whenever people are going up on the scales on stage, they've already made weight. Like everyone's always like the whole Khabib drama of like, oh, did he miss weight? It's like he already made weight backstage. It's like doesn't matter. So, but whatever. And that's how the UFC works. The whole with Sugar Shane, it was that was a little interesting because the whole idea about cutting weight and the whole reason we have weight classes is to kind of level the playing field, so to speak. Like everyone here trains, like John, even if you do jiu-jitsu, like if you see an open weight division, I don't know if you've ever been, like I've had someone in a locked armbar before, like so tight, and all they've done is pick me up and dump me because they're like 30, 40 kilos heavier than me, you know, and like size advantage is a real thing. And I think regardless what your thoughts are on the size advantage, whether you get it or you don't, cutting weight, I think at the highest level in the UFC, everyone's good. Everyone's a good striker. Everyone's a good grappler. Everyone's got a set level of skill. We're all looking for those 1%, and maybe that size advantage does play into it. So I think Ludo, he missed by something like 5 pounds or something, which to me, and he, with the UFC process, he tried, like he went down for his first test, jumped on, they said, you missed, you've got 2 hours to go. And then his team just said, nah, we're not going to try anymore. Like, we're just calling it. And so he didn't even go back up and try to make the weight, which says to us, well, to me, as a professional who does this, is you probably plan to miss that weight and you've just going to come back in a lot heavier, because where Shane was, we were 5 pounds lighter. So we've got to put 5 pounds more of food and fluid, back in. And then we'll get back up to where he is, but he's already 5 pounds ahead of us. So come fight time, he's probably going to be that much bigger than us. Whether or not that makes a difference, who knows? We know when you're cutting weight, if you're cutting a fair bit of water, not that Shane cuts a lot of weight, but we know you can be chinnier. Like, I don't know, can you absorb more shots? And does it balance itself out when both fighters are cutting the same amount of weight? Are they going in there at the same level of chinniness and the same power? So I guess that's where, especially where Israel was voicing his concern, is it's almost like an unfair advantage. And I think what really got to us was that they didn't even go back and try. They didn't even go back and attempt to make the weight. They just missed it and then just started eating blueberries or whatever they started eating. And it's like, that's not really in the spirit of the sport. And I think you're doing it to try and get this advantage.
All right. Now, Tom, you don't need to apologize, man, for asking questions. It's, you ask questions anytime. We're going to get to them. Don't worry about it, man. You're watching the show. We appreciate you. So, yeah, we appreciate the sub too. Yeah, let's get to that other question Tom had about Khabib. I think that's interesting because I think a lot of people wonder that too, about how much do you think Khabib weighs when he steps into that cage? In your estimation, in just the eye test, I guess, the naked eye, what do you think?
Yeah, I've actually got some notes here from when I did that Khabib video, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do. I can't find it, but I don't know if I was allowed to do this or put this out. I actually spoke to someone who worked with Khabib in a couple of his fights before, and I was like, hey man, like they didn't really give out many numbers on this video. I'm reviewing this video. Are these numbers correct? So apparently out of camp, Khabib walks around at 85 kilos, which I'm not going to do the maths for pounds, but you guys can do it at home. And so that's about 15 kilos heavier than the weight class. And he goes into fight week at about 76.5, which is by no means that heavy. I would estimate he comes in somewhere between there. He probably comes in at 81, 82, which I don't think is that crazy of a weight for a lightweight, because I've had lightweights who come down from 90 plus kilos and then they're coming back in the cage, 85 plus. I don't think Khabib was that crazy, but in saying that, Khabib had a lot of things going on, with his father. Apparently he had the mumps or something and had a broken toe. Maybe all of that slowed down his weight descent, and these numbers aren't true. And maybe he came in and he had to cut a lot more weight than what he normally did. If he managed to get it back on, maybe he was up at 85, 86, which I would probably think was the case.
Well, Khabib, it didn't matter. He went in there and just put on this master performance like nobody expected. There's just dominance, man, and one of the greatest of all time, in the lightweight division. I still believe he still has a lot to prove to become to become like at the level of like a John Jones or a GSP or Anderson Silva. I feel like he should defend the title. There's so many contenders in this division, but that's just me talking about Khabib. A lot of people would completely disagree with me and say like Khabib is a legend. He doesn't need to do anything. And if he doesn't do anything, he's still a legend, man. He's what, 29-0? That's like unbelievable, right? So we'll see what happens with Khabib. Now let's go to another question. What we got here?
We got one here. How much do you think Dan Hooker cuts at featherweight versus lightweight now from Tristan?
Well, Dan's one of my clients, so I do know the answer to this. I don't know how much info I can give away 3 weeks before his fight, but I will say Dan's very disciplined. He's very disciplined with his diet. Out of all those boys, Dan is by far the most disciplined. So we'll say that much. I've never had a time where we've been at a fight week or where Dan's away at a fight week where I've been like, I've broken a sweat and been like, oh crap, I don't know if Dan's going to make weight. He's very, very good with, he educated himself though. Like I remember the first time like I met him, he was talking to me about, you know, his calories and his macros. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? Like he's very smart with all of that. And I think, and he has told me this because he used to do pretty rough cuts going down to featherweight. And he says he has like PTSD from the sauna. So he's never going to put himself in a position where he does that again. And he's a beast, right? Like I think you see it with Dan is because like I was talking about before, it because of the dehydration in the brain and in the head that comes from cutting a lot of weight, guys get chinny. And like, look at Dan, like he can take some serious damage. Like if you're going to fight the way Dan Hooker fights, you don't want to be cutting a lot of weight. Like, yeah, it's not advisable, but Dan's just a professional like that. He's a good size for a lightweight. Like I actually do seminars, and when I put up and I talk about how you do assessments and what weight you should be, Dan's always my poster boy that I use.
Yeah, man, Dan. He's always, man, he's been around for so long. I feel like a lot of people that are, I guess, just getting on to watching City Kickboxing and the fighters there, they don't understand. Dan was the first one in the UFC out of that group. And he's been in the UFC for I don't even know how many years now, and had a gang of fights at featherweight. And now he's just kind of like coming on into his own in the lightweight division. And now he's at the top of he's the cream of the crop, man, at the division. And that's why he's fighting Michael Chandler in his next fight in a couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens in that fight, and we'll see what happens in the Conor and Poirier fight. I feel like they are on the short list of guys that are most likely going to fight for the title in later this year. And let's see what happens. What do we got? What else we got here?
We got another from. Oh, here you go. 1 second. Is it stressful? Yeah, from Randy. Is it stressful or fun helping these athletes make weight? I would be freaking out, says Randy.
I was with Jordi one time in China. That's the only time I've been with Jordi during like weight cuts, and I feel like before Jordi gets into it, I'm gonna say something. I feel like it all depends on the athlete, because you're helping Kai, and Kai is a professional too, right? And it's like you weren't stressed out at all during that time. So let me just add that in before Jordi gets into it.
Yeah, for sure. It all depends on, I think, two things, like who you're working with and how many of them you have. Like it's both stressful and it's really fun. I think I have the best job in the world. I think it's just seeing the whole process unfold, and like you do all this maths and like, man, you spend so much time doing all these equations and predicting all this stuff at the start, and then seeing it unfold in real life is really cool. And like just seeing what you can do with the human body and when you manipulate these systems is crazy, but it is very stressful. Especially the most stressful part is not so much that you don't have faith in your systems or you don't have faith in the athlete in following them. A lot of the stress comes from time. It comes from trying to get down, like I was talking about, you've got that 2-hour window to go weigh in. And when you're doing this with multiple athletes at the same time, you kind of have to bang on, get your timings right. So this guy has to go in the tub for this amount of time and I have to watch him. And then as soon as he gets here, I need to get his teammates to watch him. And then I'll run off to this guy and we need to start. And everything kind of has to go perfectly to plan. The most stressful times I've had is when something happens. Like I remember years and years ago, I was doing cuts with maybe 4 athletes, like kind of throughout the morning and into the afternoon. And then one of my other athletes who was already on weight was like, man, like I'm like a pound or 2 pounds under. Can I eat? And I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm like, been sitting in a sauna for hours or baths for hours. Like I was looking pretty zombie myself. And he's like, man, do you mind like cooking me a bit of chicken or something that I can eat, some rice? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess, like you're paying me. That's what my job is. So like I made this probably 10-minute time frame where I could go make this guy some chicken. But because I was pretty dehydrated and incoherent, I was running. I remember like doing this chicken, cutting it, and I sliced my finger. And I was like, oh no. And I just got like, I think it's like electrical tape and just wrapped it up. And then I was like, I need to just get this to him. Like there's no blood or anything in the food, but I got it to him. And then I had to go straight into another weight cut with another athlete because I couldn't mess up the timing because we didn't have enough spare time to get everything. So I was like watching him, and I'm low-key bleeding out in this bathroom, like, and I was like trying not let him see it, and there's just blood everywhere on all these towels. And like someone walked in and they just like looked and they were like, okay, we'll leave you to it. Just kept going. But that's the most stressful part, is like, you know, this will all work. And I've worked with these guys a lot, and I'm like, Kai, we've done so many camps together. I know what his body's going to go through. It's just the timing. It's just getting that timing right, or when someone throws a spanner in the works where you're like, your blood pressure can get up a little bit.
Yeah, man. Like he said, it all depends on the situation. And what we got next, man? I think we got some more.
Chris, who is one of our co-hosts on the post-fight podcast here, is asking, Jordi, can you give Nick some tips he could do with cutting a few kilograms? Hopefully he can pass them on to me. I would say I've just started keto again in January, so I'm 7 days in, trying to lose weight. But I like John, I have also ballooned, but I think I've gained more than 10. I'm maybe 90 kg I was, which is the heaviest I've ever been. I would love some tips if you do have them, yes.
Someone said this to me on a podcast I was on the other day. It's like, the best diet you're going to use in 2021 is the same one that you'll be using in 2022 if you can stick to it. So it's like, find what works for you. I have like a few rules that I like with guys. Like, protein throughout the day is really important. Get some good protein in. Like, carbohydrates if you train. If you don't train or don't do anything, then you don't need carbs. Go keto. It's fine. If you train, get your carbohydrates in around training. Make sure you've got good healthy fats, like plant-based fats, marine-based fats, tree nuts, oils, salmon, things like that. Get a good deal of them in. And then we've got 3 other things that we always preach to our guys is sleep. Make sure you're getting 8 to 9 hours sleep. Stress, do some type of yoga, I don't know, watch TV, whatever you need to do to chill out. Sleep, stress, and then water. Make sure you're hydrated throughout the day. And I guess the other thing that I'll add in is that every meal, throw some veggies in there. Like, it's so easy to overeat, but not when you're eating a big plate of veggies as well. Like, they're very basic tips, but I would just say if you can tick those 6 or 7 things off, you're starting the race off pretty well.
Well, there you go, Nick. I hope you lose 20 kilos in 6 months. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, I lost a lot on keto last year. I went down to about 70, 78 from 90, but
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be about 66 kilos 5 years ago, so I'm trying to get back down to there.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
a long
trying
way.
to get like, you got to get like TV slim, like, so when you get on TV, you look all right.
Now we're on YouTube more. I got to look after the
exactly,
in the body.
Got to do it, man. Got to do it. That's the goal. That's the plan. So like, we got some questions. Like, okay, let's get in this one, and then I want to get into another topic because I think there's something interesting. What does he say?
Daniel Harris again asking, what's the favorite meals after weigh-in for some of your fighters? I guess he means.
Oh yeah, so some of the guys, like, I'm pretty relaxed after weigh-ins. Like, there's certain numbers you need to hit, like certain carbohydrates you need to hit, but I'm by no means like you have to eat this exact meal. Like, I think mentally it's good for these guys who've dieted for 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever to have like their favorite meal. Volko, this guy, he loves pho. Like, he just loves pho. After every weigh-in, he gets pho. What's Kai get? Kai always gets like a pizza or a burger. Pizza, not like crazy unhealthy, like all these weird meats and everything. Like, we usually get a good one, but we usually get pizza, burger, or a pasta or something like that. We usually do a team dinner as well afterwards. So it's like everyone gets down, and I always feel sorry for the guy that like sits next to me at the team dinner, because they're always like looking and like, should I be eating this? Like, man, I don't care. I just work for you. I'm eating a burger. But yeah, like, I'm not too strict in that post-weigh-in period. You should definitely, there's numbers that you need to hit, but that in a 30 to 36 hour window, like, there's definitely room for these guys to be having like their favorite meal. Like, yeah, Volko, off the top of my head, Volko always has pho. Kai, we always look to get like a small pizza or like a little burger, like a chicken burger or something like that. Brad loves Asian. He loves Asian food, actually. So it's always like a fried rice or something like that. I make these oats, and a couple of them, I made it one fight camp, and the only reason I made it is because I knew we were behind their numbers and they needed to eat it the morning of the fight. And I was like, I had my whole team, and the chef was like, he was out on the beers or whatever. And so I didn't want to disturb him, and I had to like throw together a dish or something. So I just like got the most carby foods that I had. I put like oats, and I put like peanut butter, and then I put like Nutella and all this other stuff, like very high carb foods. And then I gave it to a couple of them with all these like berries and stuff on it and banana. And then ever since then, they're like, oh man, I always need to have that. I need to have that. And I'm like, man, I don't even know. Like, I can't remember what I did. I was delirious. It was the end. Like, I was just scrummaging through the cupboard to what we had left. And so a lot of the guys get game day oats. We call them game day oats now. But yeah, that's just a few of them.
Awesome. What was I thinking about? Like, yeah, I always see like your guys that you work with and girls, they're always posting Fight Dietitian approved, and they're showing something that they're eating in the middle of camp, which looks like they shouldn't be eating it, but really you approved it. Like their numbers are good, so you're like, okay, indulge yourself with something, but it's healthy at the same time, right?
Yeah. Like, I'm a big fan lately with these guys in what we call like mini refeeds. And it's because like, it's crazy. You guys train, if you guys train or anyone listening train, like the intensity of doing mixed martial arts and all the different disciplines within it is crazy. And what these guys are doing for 8 weeks, it's almost impossible to keep up with their caloric needs. So what we do is we schedule in like refeeds, early on in camp, once or twice a week, where we go, have a barbecue, have a much higher calorie meal, because we need to make up the difference. Like, to lose weight, you just need to be in a calorie deficit. You only need to be there. But if you're there, you're still going to lose weight, but you're going to feel terrible. So that's why I'm always promoting these guys, like prompting them like, hey, go out and get that breakfast, get the acai bowl. Like, if they've got the room to play, like if we're kind of just getting there and we're struggling there, then obviously not. For the guys who are kind of dipping down here, it's always like, yeah, go grab a pizza or grab a burger or something. We need to close that energy gap and keep you feeling good and keep your metabolism firing.
All right. Now with you, the highest profile client you have is Israel Adesanya, and he's going to move up to light heavyweight, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of, I guess there's going to be a lot of talk about like, how is he going to gain weight and go fight at light heavyweight? Is he going to just stay at the same weight? You know what I mean? Because it doesn't seem like he cuts much weight. And you've told me before that this guy, Israel, he's a professional. He's easy to work with. He's easy to deal with. So there's not many big problems with him. So what can you tell us? What can you reveal to us, right? That's not too much of a secret about him going up to light heavyweight, and maybe your views on that.
Yeah, I think everyone always talks about with Israel, like, oh, he's the skinny guy, he's the tall, skinny guy. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever met Israel. He's not small. Like, he's not a small human. Like, he's massive, he's tall, he's long, and he's built. Like, that's the thing, he's built. Like, shout out to Coach Suns, who's been his long-term strength conditioning, because he's a beast. Like, and people kind of paint this image like he's just skinny dude walking around, and he's absolutely not. So, especially when he fought Costa, like, everyone was talking about this, the size difference. And I was a bit naughty, and I kind of snuck into one of the UFC guys like computers, and I looked at the numbers for what Costa was I shouldn't have done that. I should say that out loud, but like, they're not crazy different. Like the size differential in terms of weight isn't crazy different. Like, Israel is not by any means like a small middleweight. So it's like, yeah, I'm not going to reveal too much about what we're doing, but it's not that drastically changed, because Israel does cut not a heap of weight, but he still cuts weight that week, and he comes in as a good size, but he's still like, there's no need for us to go, okay, we need to bulk right up for this one and come in, because Israel's a big dude and he's strong. And like, the thing is with Israel, like I was saying earlier, cutting weight, so to speak, and getting this perceived size advantage is fine. And you can play that card when you're like top 5 UFC and everyone's skills are here. And you're like, shit, man, I need some type of edge here. I need a bit of an edge. And we're just level playing field. I think with Israel, he's kind of like a one-of-a-generation fighter. And while everyone here who are the best of the best, I still really believe Israel's here. And I think it's hard to argue, like with that last performance he put on. And like, you talk to people who train with him every day, and you watch him train, and he's different. Like, he's different. He's different in many ways. He's different but when you watch him train, the way he moves and the way he sees things and the way he slips punches and counters. And I see hundreds of thousands of fighters train this, but no one's like Israel. No one does it like Israel. So that whole issue of this size differential, I don't think it's going to play into it as much. So definitely the strategy isn't get him huge and then do this big weight cut coming in, because one, he's not as small as what everyone says, and he's really strong for his weight class, and I think he'll do just fine. A couple of adjustments for sure. Like, I think going into the camp, like when you're making weight and you've got to go on that weight descent, not that you have to be overly restrictive, but you do have to be somewhat restrictive around certain sessions. He's kind of got the liberty now. You don't have to be like that. It's like, yeah, you'll still need to eat well in performance, but every single session you can eat like it's a barn burner performance session, whereas like it's not like a session, okay, we need to pull back some calories, let's pull back before you go in there. It's like, nah, you can go hard every single session, which to me is, if he's performing like he is, and he's kind of is doing that where he's under fueling certain sessions on purpose and then over fueling only particular ones, what's he going to be like when he has a full camp, when he's just absolutely fueled to the rim and he's coming out swinging? So it's like, yeah, I'm super excited for it. But yeah, I don't think the weight is, we're definitely not worried about that.
Yeah, people they look at like the light heavyweights that go up and fight at heavyweight. It just seems like they just didn't care about their diet. They just ate whatever they wanted, trained, and they went out there and fought. And they look at that and they kind of put that vision of that fighter to everybody else that moves up in weight. They're like, oh, these guys are just gonna eat whatever they want. But when you look at it, a lot of the guys that went up from featherweight to lightweight, they were still very what you call it, disciplined, right? Guys that were moving up from a welterweight to middleweight, they were very disciplined still. You know what I mean? It's not like they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna let go and just eat whatever I want, man. They got a big team behind them, and I feel like people are missing out on that aspect, right? That, you know, Israel, he's, like you said, he's one of the, like, one in a generation, right? He's one of the guys who will always be talking about, like, 20, 30 years from now, like, what did he accomplish in the UFC, in mixed martial arts? But for you, like, like, you've been in the game and you're still young in the game, but to have a client like that so early in your career must be great, man. It must be a great feeling for yourself.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like Israel especially, but all those guys, like I've learned so much, especially Eugene, you know, like it's a very tight-knit crew, and it's a tight-knit family, and they keep the circle tight. And like, even just being around them, I've learned so much. I've learned so much in many different areas of life from those guys. And I think those people are special for a reason, you know. And like Eugene's very big on, like, you know, like attracts like, and put yourself around the right people. And I think it's 100% true, right? Like, what's that old saying? Like, if you hang around 5 idiots, you'll be the 6th. And if you hang around with 5 world champions, you'll be on your way, type thing. So, and I think that's just the mindset and the culture they've fostered at City Kickboxing, is like, they know, like, they've almost got the formula, and now they're showing the results. Whereas like Eugene is like, okay, this is what you do. And look around you, like, there's people doing it. They're all at different stages, but look, Israel's here and Dan's up here, but like Brad Riddell's coming up on that path, and the guy that just walked into the gym can see it, and they can see every step of that pathway. So just like professionally speaking, being around that, I think, has just been monumental for my progress as a professional. And yeah, I guess like getting to do this on that world stage, it's like really made me figure out my processes fast, right? Like, I think you have like a lot of people kind of go through a few years maybe where they're figuring out trial and errors. Like, yeah, I was pretty fortunate that I was in this position pretty early on. Like, don't get me wrong, like I do a ludicrous amount of reading and really get my nerd on, and spend hours and hours and hours of my time listening to people far smarter than me, and talking to my mentors and everything, and making sure I can do it. But you kind of have to, because at that level, you need to be giving the absolute best service that you can. Because at that level, when you're fighting for your second UFC belt, those 1%ers actually do count. Like, they actually do count. For us three schmucks, it doesn't count. Like, it doesn't matter at all. But for those guys right up there, it actually makes a difference.
Yeah, so when you're working with the highest level people, you have to become a high level person yourself, right? And it kind of gives you this pressure, but it's good pressure. And then, like they always say, the cliche is pressure makes diamonds, and that's what you're working on, is becoming this diamond in the industry. Even for myself, you know, like interviewing fighters, man, people think like it's something that's easy, but it's man, once you start getting in front of some of these guys that are big names, and you do have some pressure, man, because a lot of people are going to watch these interviews, and they're going to comment on them, and they're going to critique them, right? And you could get some criticism. So there is pressure in all aspects of this game at the highest level. Some people think it's just easy. It's not. And now, moving on from that, I wanted to get into when you go to Fight Island, right? There's that. No, before we get into the this topic, I wanted to get into I want to rewind back to when you came out on Embedded, when you're on Embedded, and and you're working with Israel. I think this was before either it was before the Costa fight or it was before the Yoel Romero fight. I don't remember exactly. Do you remember?
I was on it both times. I think Mitch shoved a camera in my face both times.
Yeah. But the one that Israel was emotional, like he got really emotional.
Oh yeah, that was for the Yoel fight in Vegas. Yeah.
Were you in the room at that time?
I
Right?
I was about to walk up to him and give him something when they were filming. I kind of turned around and thought, "Oh, this is a moment."
Yeah,
I suppose.
like that moment, man. I think like that's something that really showed, like what this means to him. You know what I mean? What he's going through, what he's accomplishing, right? That moment it shows to him, and they caught it perfectly. And you were in the room, man. Like, what was that feeling like? Like this dude's getting. This is like one of the killers of the world, man. Like everybody, like he goes in there and smashes people, and you see him getting emotional. Have you just been around that so much where like you've seen emotional fighters that it's nothing to you really, and you know how to handle it, or was it kind of like were you kind of like shocked a little bit?
No, not really, because I think that whole process it's a very intimate process, right? And I don't think people quite appreciate that. Like that athlete is trusting you with this. And I always say to people that in basketball, no one sinks a three, or in soccer, no one kicks a goal, or in football, no one scores a touchdown and runs out and goes, man, that guy must have had a great dietitian. There's never that or he must eat really well. That never happens. But when you're making weight, that is the case. Like there's all eyes, and a lot of these professionals, they're putting that trust and all that pressure onto you. And for that moment in time, there's all that pressure on you. And to get through that, you have to have a certain relationship with them. And you have to have a certain level of trust between you. And it's a very intimate time, right? Like, because they're not at your mercy, but they're doing what you say, and they're trusting that you're doing the best things in the best interest of their health and what they need to achieve right now. And I think every athlete is different with that. And I was only talking about this just before, is that the emotion someone goes through when they're sweating in a tub, you got to remember these guys they're not too bad, but they are depleted, and it's almost that survival mechanisms kicking in, and their why really grows. Like their why are you doing this, really pushes them through this when you're wrapped in a cocoon and you're just staring at the ceiling and you're sweating and you're not feeling great, and you know you've got a couple hours left on this. You have to have a big driving force behind that. So being able to recognize that and understand where your client is coming from and what's driving them really changes like what I do in that cut. So with Kai, I have a process down pat. I have certain music that I play with Kai, and that's completely different with Brad. We have a completely different process with Brad, and with Israel, even the way we interact and talk is very different, because Israel kind of has this persona, like he lives and breathes the style bender. Like that's a person he becomes when he goes into this arena. He becomes the style bender, and you can see that kind of coming out when he's going through this process. And there's certain cues that you use to kind of elicit that and help him get through it when it's getting tough. And I think that was just a special moment, right? And I think where we're kind of like overlooking the strip, and he just made weight, and it was like, okay, this is the next biggest thing in your career. And down the strip, like that week, there's just billboards of him everywhere. And like, I can't imagine what that's like for him to just go down and see all that. Maybe it just all came to him. And like, I give full credit to Israel, because a lot of these guys, like, play that tough guy persona, and they're like, hey, I'm big and blah, 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 and whatever. But Israel's just Israel, and he like lives and breathes every part of himself, and he's just being raw. And that's just him. Like that's no BS. That's not for the cameras. That's Israel. And I really, really respect that.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing from many other people, man. That's just him. Now, before we get into the Australian and New Zealand MMA scene, is because you know a lot about that. You have a lot of fighters that you work with that are on the regional scene that are most likely going to end up in the UFC, Bellator, One Championship, somewhere right in the big stage. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask you about the 48-hour quarantine that people, the fighters, the coaches, everybody has to go through on Fight Island when they land there. Do you feel like that has an effect on like the fighters, like their performance? Do you think that could be something there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it's all about timing, right? Like some guys, when we got in the Friday, and then it was like not until the following Sunday. And I think like Brad and the fighters and Israel and Kai and Shane that got in on the Saturday. So they were out by Monday. So they still had the entire week. And then they had until Sunday to get ready for it. So you kind of got in, and they give you training mats in there so you can train. And a lot of the time, yeah, I think you're in there by yourself. I don't even think you can buddy up. But yeah, it definitely plays a role if you get there late or if you're a short notice call up. If you got in there on the Monday, you're out on the Wednesday, you're weighing in Friday, and then you got to fight Sunday. Like, that's tough. And if you've got to cut weight, and then the whole, like, shout out to the UFC PI nutrition team, like, they've got it down pat, but they're only limited to certain things they can do when you're in that quarantine period. And, you know, they do their check-in once you get out. They can't make contact with you face-to-face until you get out. So some guys could be going in there heavy, and then they're just messaging, like, you know, Charles and Reed and whatever, trying to figure out how to start getting that weight down, because in the COVID period, that's a big issue because everyone's just getting short notice call-ups. And they're like, oh, crap. Like, and there's not a lot of fights going on, so you can't really say no. So they're just taking it, and then they need to make this weight, and then they're just kind of compounded with this 2-day quarantine. It's like, obviously for us, like, we had a whole camp, so it wasn't too bad. But I could definitely see, and after talking to Charles and Reed, how there could be problems there. But it's just it's a weird thing just sitting in a room. Like, we did it for 14 days, but just the whole concept of just sitting in a room by yourself, and yeah, you get a bit over it after pretty quickly.
Yeah, of course. Now, you know, we're gonna talk about the Australian, New Zealand MMA scene now. But if you have any questions for when we're done with talking about that, put them in the chat, and we'll get to those. Now, you know, with the MMA scene, right? Australia has been on lockdowns, and there's been restrictions, right, going on throughout the year. But then there has been some shows from time to time. Eternal had I believe, a couple of shows last year. You know, like, I feel like if there was no COVID going on, there would be a lot more fighters that are signed to the UFC, right? From Australia, from New Zealand. It's just that the restrictions are limiting their action, their participation in just combat sports. For yourself, you know, like, who are some of the people that you're working with right now that maybe we'll eventually see on the big stage?
Ooh, there's a few. We've got
list them all, man. This is the time to shine.
Let me get up my client list so I don't miss anyone. No, but there's a lot of guys. Like, speaking of, like, Eternal, I think personally, like, within Eternal, everyone that holds a belt within that organization could probably make the step up to the UFC, right? Like Casey's a good example. Like, she was the strawweight champ there, and then she made the step over. Like, you know, there's a lot of good guys on this regional scene. I think Jack Della is the welterweight champion. He's like, what? He's like 8 and 9 and on the trot or something. Like, he should definitely be in there. Like, that lightweight division at Eternal is crazy competitive. I work with, like, a lot of those guys, like Brenton Mumford, you know, Tim Schultz, Trev Sinclair, like Josh Kuhn, this dude that's had 2 professional fights, or 4 fights, whatever he had, and he's had, like, a total amount of cage time of, like, 42 seconds. Like, he's just knocking dudes out left, right, and center. It's crazy, the talent pool across Australia now. And I don't know if that's, like, you know, promotions like Eternal that are kind of just stepping up and they're giving these guys a platform, because when you, like, go to Eternal and you, like, be a part of that, I've said this to Cam before, it's like, it feels like a mini UFC. They're kind of giving these guys, like, a mini UFC experience. I don't know if that just plays into the whole thing where it just, like, gets their mindset. But, oh, man, I would list all of them, but I'm definitely going to miss people, so I won't list everyone. But there's a lot of good guys coming out. Like, in the lightweight division, I think is the most competitive right now in Australia. It's just crazy. Like, I've quite a lot of those guys, and they could all fight each other, and it would be like a 50-50 fight, and they could all eventually make the UFC or one or you know, Bellator or whatever.
Well, with the Eternal, they've been more consistent with shows. You know, they have title defenses consistently, right? There's other promotions like Diamondback, you got Hex, you got after XFC, right? XFC's been having shows. You know, they have really good champions over there too. For example, you got what's his name from New Zealand, who's the XFC champ, and who's also the Hex champ. Man, his name is slipping my mind. Oh, Matt Vale, man.
Oh, yeah.
They need to keep an eye on Matt Vale, man. That guy, he's a beast. He's a monster, man. And I think he's kind of closely knit with Dan Hooker too right now. So I think Dan's trying to push him a little bit. So yeah, look out for him. Jack Della, definitely he needs his shot in the UFC, right? But if you're gonna watch a promotion that is like easiest to watch and they're more consistent, Eternal is probably the best one because they do have that UFC Fight Pass deal, right? And then they have they throw shows where they can have like audiences, which is what was their last show in Perth? Perth, you could actually have an
Yeah.
audience there at the show, so they could sell tickets and you know somewhat profit from having shows, right? And it's broadcasted internationally. So yeah, if I was a fan of fighting and you're watching the Australian scene, I would definitely check out Eternal and XFC. Those are the ones that are a little bit more consistent. But Hex has great fighters there. Oh, you know what's his name just got signed, but he was injured. They had to pull him out of a Fight Island card. Was Izzy Dox, man. Izzy Dox,
Yeah.
he's a monster too, a training partner of Robert Whitaker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you know he'll be back. You know, I mean, he told me he injured his arm training for his fight for his debut. So you know he got to take care of that, and he'll be back, and we'll see him in the UFC soon. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there, man. But you just got to keep your eye on it, man. Just keep your eye on those promotions. There's a question right here. What is it? Zion Gem?
Yeah, one sec. Here you go. Zion asking, I've heard in interviews that Carlos Silberg is the next thing. What's your take on him?
Carlos is don't let his looks deceive you is my take on him, because he looks like he's carved from stone. He looks like a Greek god, but he's legit. He's the real deal. He's been around city kickboxing for a long time. He was a 2-division King of the Ring champion. So that was a title that I think the only other person who's held that double division champ status is Israel. And then Carlos has gone out and done it as well. And then he went out on Contender Series just recently, and he put his opponent, was it away in the second, I think? Was it in the second or just before? So. Yeah, just in the second. And he put him away pretty convincingly. But then he went and spent 6 weeks living with Brad Riddell and Israel Adesanya, training at ADOS Jiu-Jitsu, you know, with Galvero and Josh Hinger. So it's like, it's crazy. Like, it's just, these guys are just next level. And Carlos, yeah, he's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about Carlos, like way back, you know what I mean? Like years, like 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago was the first time I've heard about him. And they're telling me like back then, he's like a guy that can fight and has everything. Like he has the it factor. He has just everything. He just needs that opportunity. And finally you get it. You know what I mean? 2 years later, he's gonna make his debut. I'm very interested to see who he matches up with first. Because, you know, like that's gonna be interesting to, you know, once he's actually in the UFC, how does he perform in his debut? But yeah, they're expecting big things from him. And so is everybody in New Zealand, right? They've known about him. Wasn't he on The Bachelor or something too?
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a funny I don't know, sorry Carlos if you don't want me to tell this, but yeah, twice. I think they asked him to go on twice, but Carlos is a G. Like, when I asked him about it, he was like, yeah, man, I just didn't do it because I like training and that was my focus. It's like, I just wanted to train. It's one time they asked, he had a partner, and then the second time he was single and probably could have gone on. He said, no, that's not my goal. Like, my goal isn't to be on TV. I want to get to the UFC. But Carlos was actually in Fight Island with us. He was in Fight Island with us with Blood Diamond, who's been around at CKB for years and years. And yeah, so both of those guys are very closely on the UFC radar. Carlos is in there now, and I think Bloods is probably going to be pretty close as well. So yeah, the CKB roster it's growing pretty quick.
Yeah, how could you not have him on the UFC? His name is Blood Diamond. Come on, and I've talked to Blood Diamond before too, and yeah, he has a very interesting story. His life is not a normal life, you know what I mean? Like, he came up, it's totally different. I can't wait until they actually show that, you know what I mean, in some kind of like documentary form or something like that, or a long form interview of like what he has gone through in his life. Yeah, it's amazing. What's next? He says,
we got Chris is asking, do you guys think because of travel we'll see Australian and New Zealand athletes go to the Asian Contender Series as opposed to the one in the Apex in the future?
Do you know anything about that, Jordi?
I've had a couple of my guys chat with the Contender Series, and I knew, I'm not a manager. I know like all of that stuff. There's a lot of like legal stuff that goes on, but one of our athletes who was going on the Contender Series, that was an option that was put forward, was, okay, if we can't get to Vegas, maybe we try for the Asian one. I think they were running it in China or something like that, or they were meant to run it in China, but it was put on the table. I don't know how far that would get along and what would happen with the restrictions and everything, but it's definitely been suggested.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a better choice for just matchup wise and just having a larger pool of fighters to pull from. Is to have the Australian, New Zealand fighters come up and fight in the Apex in China. And plus, a lot of those guys already travel to Asia to fight. That's just a normal thing. So it's not like something new to a lot of the guys. So we'll see what happens. There's another question about pirating. What's Dana going to do about pirating? I heard that they're going to have some kind of program, some kind of bot that they're going to be able to trace like all the way to your home, all the way to your IP, who's like pirating like the shows, the events. And if that's true, man, that's gonna be scary for a lot of people that don't have money, because if they're pirating and they get caught doing that, they're gonna have to pay some fines and stuff, and it's not gonna be fun for them, man, especially you don't have a job or nothing like that. But yeah, but at the same time, I feel like pirating is pirating. You're never going to stop it, man. It's just going to happen. It's just going to continue, because you've seen it throughout the years, right? Like one site goes down, another site comes up, and then there's sites from all over the world, like Russia, China, wherever, and they're just pirating everything. So they're going to do a good job, and they've been doing a good job, I think. But yeah, what can we do, man? I pay for it, so.
I got to drag myself to the office. South China Morning Post. I think we got the subscription to Now TV in Hong Kong there, so I can watch the pay-per-views. I can't get them. Yeah, I can't get. I don't have Now TV anymore.
Okay, well,
too expensive.
Yeah, well, I pay like $100 a year for like this service over here, and you get all the UFC events, and the Bellator events. But the shitty part about that is they don't show the prelims. They only show the main cards. So it's like I have to miss all the prelims, and I want to watch some of the prelim guys, because there's guys on the prelims that I've talked to, I've interviewed, and I want to see their performances. I want to see their fights, right? And to follow the sport, you need to watch some of the prelims at least. But what can you do, man? I'll find a way. I'll find a way. Yeah, man. Before we shut it down, Jordi, what does the next 3 or 4 months look like for you? Tell us what's going to be happening.
Yeah, so start of the year is always a bit manic. It's a bit crazy. So everyone's kind of just getting over that holiday New Year period, and they all think, okay, I should get back in shape and start doing what I'm paid to do and start fighting again. But a lot of the guys have fights coming up in March, so they've been in camp and whatnot, or have just started camp. And then you've got those local shows like XFC and Eternal are starting up again. So within Australia, we've got a lot of our guys starting to get ready for that. But I think I said this last time before COVID hit, that we were going to do a lot of education. And just after that UFC week when we spoke in February, we did a nationwide tour and seminar tour of New Zealand, and that went really well. So now that Australia's kind of relaxing a bit, we've got a couple pockets that are bad, but I think we're going to start doing a lot more tours within Australia nationally and kind of keep that education up. We're doing a lot of research. The physio on our team just submitted one of his first papers that he did, and he did a lot of our clients. He used a lot of our clients in that paper to kind of assess that. And we're doing, just kind of keep up with the research and the education and keep the ball rolling until, kind of, I'd say we'd wait out this COVID, but I think this is the new normal. So we're just kind of adapting with it and rolling with it and keep on trucking on.
Definitely, man. Well, like I said at the beginning of the show, go subscribe to Jordi's YouTube channel. It's Jordi Sullivan, Fight Dietitian. I guess you could find it if you search it, and follow him on Twitter and Instagram. Man, he's always putting out content. Man, he's always releasing information that it might be hard to understand sometimes, but I would give him a listen, man. It's very interesting. I try to watch as much as I can, because I need to educate myself so I don't look too stupid when I'm talking about certain topics that I shouldn't be talking about. So that's why I watch. Anyways, thank you, Jordi, man. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I consider you like a day one. What a day one is like someone that I've known for a long time, even before I was on like a larger platform and speaking to the bigger names. We've spoke and we've always watched each other like kind of come up in the game, right? And we're actually still beginning in our journeys, but man, it's crazy to watch you and how much you have grown in such a short period of time. I'm really happy for you.
No, back at you, and it's the same, right? It's crazy, hey, like a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, whenever we first spoke, and see both of our journeys kind of intertwine and tingle around. And now I'm looking forward to the future. I think there's a lot of cool things happening in combat sports. I think it's probably the fastest growing sport in the world. I think it's the new karate or little league to do for kids. So I think it's just only going to get bigger. And yeah, it's exciting to see what will happen.
Definitely, man. Keep educating, and everybody that's watching, make sure to subscribe, like, share. Thank you, Nick. Always. This is the man, the captain, the DJ, the producer. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week. Next week I'll have the CEO, the head boss of MMA Sucker. If you know that website, if you know MMA, you should know that website. He's gonna come on. He's gonna join us, and we're gonna be talking, chatting.